Here it is, January 4th, 97, and Carly just got here. Hi, Carly.
Hi, Papa.
Hello there.
This is a picture of Carly. She is missing one of her front teeth, and she just looks adorable. Carly was more like a little sister to me than my niece. We were only 8 years apart, so it was like having a little sister around.
Go ahead, pedal, push.
Here we have a video of my brother teaching Carly how to ride her new bike outside. There's a lot of snow on the ground because it was March.
Damn it!
She's calling out for me. Her calling out for me, you know, it was, the love went both ways.
Everybody loved her. She loved people. When she walked into a room, her energy, and you just felt it. She would have been something special. I know that, because she was special.
What's the location of the emergency?
My daughter is missing.
Okay, what's her name, ma'am?
Carly?
A child was reported missing Sunday evening during the Super Bowl.
Carly was an 11-year-old girl. Everybody in the community was very concerned.
I turned on the news and there's my brother being interviewed about Carly's disappearance.
I'd like to say to the man who abducted her, you've done a considerable amount of damage. Please stop. Release my daughter.
Reality sets in very quickly that this is really happening, and it's terrifying.
The second that video came into our possession, this case took a whole new turn.
When you see the video, you know in your pit of your stomach that it's probably not going to end well.
This is a broad daylight interaction. Carly was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's everybody's worst nightmare, especially a parent.
We had this great piece of evidence that showed this crime having occurred, but we were stumped. We simply had no suspects to work with.
Watching my brother navigate through grief and loss, it's excruciating. It changes you forever. This bright future that we had for Carly, all those hopes and dreams, you realize they're never going to happen. It's just gone in a second. Yeah, he took that away from us. This has to be my most favorite picture of Carly. I love that it was taken here in my backyard. We all have so many memories of pushing each other on the swing, and she just looks so happy. When my sister and I found out that we were going to have a niece, we couldn't wait for her to be born. I was 8 years old at the time. My sister was around 11. We were just beyond excited. Carly was born on March 16th, 1992. She arrived several weeks early. She was perfectly healthy. It was just so exciting to be able to hold her. Carly was the cutest. She had these big electric blue eyes, this beautiful blonde hair, and she was always smiling. My brother Joe was just the greatest dad. He was so excited to have a baby girl and to share her with our family.
What do you have? What do you have?
What do I have?
Yeah, this must have been the video right before she left for Florida. She was probably leaving the next day.
Well, you know, Carly's going to Florida. She's taking a big, big trip. Mm-hmm.
You going to Florida with mommy? You gonna miss your daddy?
Yeah. I do miss my daddy.
Yes, and we're all going to miss our little Carly.
Carly was about 2 when I found out my brother Joe and his wife, Carly's mom, were separating, and she was going to be moving to Florida. We were devastated. I remember my parents telling us that we would see Carly over the summer and we would see her again over the Christmas break. My sister and I were very upset about the fact that we would only see her twice a year. We were so used to having her in our everyday life. But my brother and Carly, they just had a wonderful relationship, and even though she was living in Florida, they were in contact all the time, so they maintained a close connection.
My daughter's name is Mandy, and her and Mandy were just like two peas in a pod. Carly was in kindergarten, and her and my daughter were in the same class. When they first met, they didn't like each other. They used to fight, and they ended up being best friends. Sarasota has changed a lot, but back then, it was much smaller and very laid back. It was very like a quaint kind of a town. You could play outside till dark and not worry. You could ride your bicycle around town and not worry. Carly was just a typical 5-year-old. She was always at my house. We'd have dinner at her house. She'd have dinner at our house, and we'd go grocery shopping together. We were more like family than we were friends. She loved going to visit her father, and she loved her aunt.
Carly's last visit to New York, she was 11 years old, and she was really, changing and turning more into like a teenager than a little girl.
She was growing up, and she was starting to find her own way. I think she would have done well in life, I really do, if she would have had the chance.
Our last conversation that we had, I remember being in her room at my brother's house. We were always upset when we had to leave each other. We talked about big plans of her coming back to New York when she was 16, finishing up high school in New York. I look back on that conversation, so thankful that I have that memory and that moment with her, because that was our goodbye.
What's the location of the emergency?
My daughter is missing. We've been driving around, and she's gone. We can't find her anywhere. I've called all her friends.
How old is she?
11.
And when was the last time that she was seen?
Around 6 o'clock.
Okay, what's her name, ma'am?
Carly Grusha.
It was February 1st, 2004, Super Bowl Sunday.
Detectives responded out to her house and took the report from the mother.
Even though she's a child, she was still, 11, and she was a responsible kid by all accounts that everybody I spoke to.
Carly's mom was living a pretty good life. She was a blue-collar worker, was a good mother to Carly.
Carly left her friend's house around 6:15. She was walking along a relatively busy road. There were fast food restaurants, coffee shops, but there aren't a lot of people out.
We were sitting at the dinner table, and the news came on. It was like a news break thing that she was missing. And my daughter, Mandy, screamed, "Carly!" And we turned the TV up. None of us could believe it. I mean, it was shocking.
The only thing that I was told was that Carly's missing. That's all that I knew. I was 19 at the time. My family may have known more information that they were shielding me from. The gravity and the seriousness wasn't something that entered my mind right away. I was like, okay, well, we're going to find her. It's just we have to find her. But It was shortly thereafter that the panic did set in.
I got on the phone, I called her mom, Sue, and she was in tears. Everybody went out looking. It was just surreal. It didn't seem real. It was like a nightmare.
Detectives got a list of Carly's friends. They got a list of other places that she could possibly be. And they searched throughout the night into the early morning hours, but could not find Carly.
My brother, Joe, flew down to Florida right away to help with the efforts to find her.
In my job, you're kind of jaded in many respects. You see horrible, horrible things. You relate to it. You empathize with the parents who are missing their child and you don't know where that child is. And I had kids, so it's really hard to just turn off being a father or a citizen.
It is not a common thing for children of that age to be missing overnight. And so when she didn't come back home that evening, we recognized that this is an unusual case. We contacted the Sarasota County Canine Rescue, which is a group of volunteers who have bloodhound tracking dogs. In this case, Carly had spent the night at a friend's on Bee Ridge Road, and so we started a track from her friend's house.
The police took bloodhounds from the friend's house and they tracked her 4 or 5 blocks away. It makes sense that she would walk on Bee Ridge Road. It's a main road. But the path of the bloodhounds showed that she went behind the car wash facility, and then the bloodhounds' scent stops.
The owner of the business came out and questioned what was going on. The detectives told them that we had a missing girl in the area and that we had done this track to the middle of the car wash. The owner said, well, I have just installed a video camera system, and he would go check to see if he saw anything. And that's kind of where this story took a turn. It is immediately shocking.
You see Carly walking in the back of the car wash, and you see a man walking right up to her. You see him say something, and you see him grab her above the wrist, and then they walk together out of the video's view. It's a tough video to watch.
When I watched their surveillance video, I could tell by her body language that she was kind of taken aback, and she looked kind of frozen and like she didn't know what to do. I mean, she was only 11 years old, and then he pulled her away and he pulled her off the screen and never saw her again.
She was smart, and I was shocked that, you know, it's like, why is she going with him? Did he have a weapon? It's like, And also thinking, she's gonna be terrified. I can't even imagine what that poor child went through.
There was still hope by law enforcement in our office that we would find her, but it's a scary video.
The feeling that you get when you watch that video, you know, you just want to yell at your TV, don't go with him. I wish that last time Carly and I saw each other that we had talked about stranger safety, but it's not something that you typically talk about with your friends or your little sister or your niece, but I wish that I did.
Law enforcement couldn't identify the man at that point. They didn't know who he was. He wasn't related to the family when they checked with the family members.
The video revealed that we were looking for a white male, somewhere between the ages of 25 and 40.
He was wearing a darker blue mechanic's uniform. He had a name tag there, but we couldn't make that out from the video. He walks with a distinctive gait.
You could tell by the way he walked up to Carly that he wasn't very tall. He had short cropped black hair, what appeared to be tattoos, and was wearing some work shoes.
Police are immediately trying to do everything they can, especially in a case where it seems like a child is abducted by somebody who's a stranger. But at the same time, they're also very aware that they don't want to do something that is going to spook that offender and make them cover their tracks by harming that child. So there's a fine line that police walk.
We weren't close to finding who this person was. And so that night, in time for the 11 o'clock news, we released the video to the newspapers and the TV stations.
An Amber Alert is in effect for Carly Bruscia. She was seen on this surveillance tape being approached by a man and then led away.
My mom told us, don't listen to the radio, don't listen to anything, because she's afraid that we would hear something that we shouldn't hear over the radio.
We were immediately inundated with information and tips. And the problem with it is everyone who saw that film believed that they knew that person. Everyone thought their kind of creepy neighbor was that person. Hey, my mechanic is that person. And so these tips just started pouring in.
One person called in and said based on his gait, the way he looked, his haircut, the uniform, that looks like Joseph Smith.
Smith, at the time of this event, was 37 years old. He had a few run-ins with the law already. He had served time. He was on probation for drug offenses. This was a man who wasn't exactly an upstanding citizen.
When we looked into Joseph Smith, we found out that he was employed as a mechanic at that time. His employer identified him by his walk, by his haircut, by his tattoos, and just his general appearance.
A former coworker of Joseph Smith said to police that the way he grabbed the girl actually looked like the way that Joseph Smith would grab tools. Police wanted to talk to Joseph Smith immediately.
I responded to this residence, and we were there for quite a while, banging on the door. After about 30 minutes or so, Joseph Smith came to the door, and we sat down on his front porch, and we talked about Super Bowl Sunday and what he had been doing. He said that he was watching the Super Bowl at the house, that he had basically been with people, and I could check his alibi. In front of this house was a vehicle that Joe identified as his own. At that point, the probation parole officer arrived and searched the vehicle. Drug paraphernalia was found, and Joseph Smith was arrested for violation of probation and taken to jail. While that is occurring, a white female pulls up driving a yellow station wagon. She identifies herself as Joseph's roommate and that she and her husband lived there together with Joe. I took the roommate aside and I asked about Joe's whereabouts on Super Bowl Sunday. The roommate told me that Joe was home the whole day, that she actually saw him in the house, and that they had watched pretty much the whole Super Bowl. At that point, I eliminated Joseph Smith as being a suspect in this case. We're at a loss as to what to do.
I would go to bed at night just worried about her, thinking, where could she be? Is she alone? Is she uncomfortable? Is someone hurting her? I definitely played scenarios in my head that she could still be with us. Could just be someone took her somewhere and they're holding her for ransom. Anything but to think that she's no longer with us.
The entire community stepped up to try to find this 11-year-old girl. There was people in my own family that were out searching dumpsters and looking for her. There was a lot of prayers trying to find her alive. But the first 24 hours after somebody goes missing, the longer it takes, the harder it is to find the person as a survivor.
Later on that evening, the front desk officer at the sheriff's office contacted me and said that a man was at the front desk and that they were dropping off a car because the car was involved in the Carly Bruscia abduction. And the front desk officer told me that it was the husband and wife, roommates of Joseph Smith. The husband stated that his wife had simply lied. When I interviewed the wife, again, she had no explanation for why she ever had said that Joseph Smith was at the house during the Super Bowl. According to them both now, Joseph Smith had stolen their yellow station wagon the previous Saturday and had been missing the entire weekend. Joseph Smith's alibi completely fell apart. Not only was it not substantiated, it was a false alibi.
At that point, the car is seized as potential evidence in the case. A search warrant is conducted. You have a forensic unit scouring the car for trace evidence, fibers, dirt, blood, anything that would connect Carly to the car. Ultimately, they did find little threads of pinkish, reddish caught in the back seat of the station wagon, consistent with the shirt that Carly had on, which let everybody know that she was basically in that back portion of that vehicle at some point.
You and I have some things to talk about, okay? Because some of the things at the house, we got to get straight. That's the most important thing.
Okay.
In this room is about the truth.
When it's time to re-interview him, Joseph Smith refused answering.
TV.
I was already advised to talk to a lawyer.
And he requested his right to remain silent.
That means you and I can't talk.
I think I should talk to a lawyer.
Okay.
But with his identification and with the presence of this vehicle and with now the roommate's help, we were able to start building the case against Joseph Smith. The first thing we do is we go back to the videotape and we discover other cameras at the car wash showed views of the parking lot, showed views of the car wash bays, and showed views of the westbound traffic on Bee Ridge Road.
It turns out that vehicle is seen in the videos in the front of the car wash right before Carly is abducted. You see the station wagon that was lent to Joseph Smith that Sunday, driving in the parking lot, doing a loop, circling back out onto Bee Ridge Road, the main road. Then you see it on Bee Ridge Road heading west. And ultimately, we know, based on connecting the dots, he came in on the west, parked on the west side of the car wash, abducts Carly, and takes her into the car, and that's why the bloodhound scent ends right there at that property line.
It definitively put Joseph Smith in the Bee Ridge area, driving that yellow vehicle in the area of the car wash. I knew that we had caught Carly's abductor, that Joseph Smith had committed this crime, but Carly's been gone 72 hours and she's not with the guy that she's on the film with. We need to find Carly.
Carly, being a Florida girl, loved the beach and the ocean. When Carly would visit in the summer, we would typically have a couple of days of vacation planned where we went to the beach. We built fires on the beach, we went out to dinner, and it was just one of those special vacations that you never forget. There's definitely a feeling of dread when someone that you love has been missing for days and you know that someone purposely took her. There's a feeling of helplessness. You're just sitting around waiting to find out what has happened to your loved one.
Joseph Smith asked police if he could talk with his brother. This was something that the police were a little hesitant to allow, so they said that only if it would be approved by his lawyer. Interestingly, Joseph Smith's public defender approved the meeting, and a few days after the conversation that John and Joseph had, and this is after Carly had been missing for several days, John alerts the police that there may be information that he has.
But can you tell us about what led to your call and what you saw or what you observed or what?
It's not that I observed anything. It's just the pictures. I mean, amazingly close. I mean, it looks just like my brother.
John was sort of, I would say, torn on whether to go to the police.
When you seen the video, what were your first impressions?
I got chilled. I mean, I was like, oh man.
It wasn't until he kind of thought it over and then decided, okay, I have to share this information with law enforcement.
How about the way that the individual in the video, the way that he walked?
That's the key right there. He had surgery on his back, which he has a few discs in there, fused vertebrae, so he's got a metal plate, so he does walk funny.
Which is ultimately what he did.
He was also missing Sunday. I don't know, you guys probably heard that already. He was missing Sunday.
What do you know about that? Or
He was missing between, I think, 3 and 7:30 or 3 and 8. He told his wife that he was working on someone's car. And he told my mom that he was sitting in Marina Jacks looking at the water. And then to see that on TV, Monday, I mean, that looks damn close like him. I hope it's not him, but I feel bad for the family.
What's your gut tell you?
Like 80-20 him. The more I look at that video, the more I look at him. Wow, it's an incredible resemblance, if it's not him.
Joseph Smith's brother stated that he could get Joe to tell us where Carly was.
Law enforcement assisted having Joseph Smith meet with his brother, John Smith, and his mother to talk about things privately.
He told his brother, oh, I thought she was older. I thought she was 16 or 17. He wanted to see if that helped to minimize his culpability and made him look less bad. He said it was an accident. To me, every single thing that Joseph said to his mother and to his brother was like pilot testing what he was ultimately going to tell police and jurors, and he wanted to see if they were willing to believe it. If his family didn't believe it, why would a stranger who's on a jury?
My biggest fears were that they, were going to find her body somewhere, but I still had some hope that maybe she was just being held somewhere. All those hopes were distinguished pretty quickly.
Joseph's brother and mother contacted the sheriff's office and said Joseph had confessed to killing Carly and had described to his brother where Carly's body was. We were going to put Joseph on a phone, and Joseph was going to describe where he had taken Carly and where he had dumped her. Myself and 2 other agents went to the brother's house. We picked him up. The brother sat next to me in the passenger seat, and a phone was provided to Joseph in the jail. Joseph stated that he had dumped her body at the First Church on Proctor Road, and that Carly's body would be found along a fence line. We pull into the parking lot, and I can see that there is a fence line along the backside of this church. I knew at that point that we were in the right area. I knew that Carly's body was out there. But I also knew that evidence-wise, I wanted the first person to see that body to be a forensics tech, because that was going to enable us to collect the best evidence possible.
The body of a beautiful 11-year-old girl, Carly Bruscia, has been found. Joseph Smith is under arrest for the abduction and murder of Carly.
When police found Carly's body, she was naked from the waist down. It was pretty clear that she was sexually assaulted, and she had very obvious ligature marks on her neck, meaning it was very clear this little girl was strangled to death.
It was tough. It was a somber day in our community. I knew tons of friends and family that were out searching for her. I mean, an 11-year-old girl was brutally murdered for no reason whatsoever. I wanted to bring him to justice, and it was just a sad day.
I walked in the front door and I can see, my extended family being in the house, my aunts, uncles, my parents, and, it was just like a blur, but I just remember my mom hugging us and telling us that they found her. And she was no longer with us. Our lives were never gonna be the same.
I went to Sue's house every day to help because she was just really having a hard time. The night that the sheriff came by, I had this feeling. When I went home, I just knew, something told me that they had found her. Just as I pulled up in front of the house, the sheriff knocked on the door and he told her. She dropped to her knees and she let out this bellow I've never heard in my life. When he told her that she was dead, it was horrible.
When we found out who had committed this crime, it was a bit shocking to know that it was a father of 3 daughters. Words can't describe the anger that someone has towards someone who abducts, assaults, and murders a young girl.
A lot of people mistakenly assume that because somebody is a child abductor, rapist, and murderer, that they're just horrible and evil throughout every single aspect of their entire life, that they are a terrible parent, that they are terrible at their jobs. That's not often the case. In fact, usually the people that are really vile and commit such despicable acts tend to live relatively normal lives. They blend in. They have children of their own. They have a family. They have a job.
We were lucky enough to have our own funeral service here in New York for Carly. It was definitely a difficult day. We had it in a local church, and our neighbor is a deacon, and he knew Carly, so he talked about memories of seeing Carly swinging on the tree swing and just having a great time in the yard. The church was packed, friends and family, friends I haven't seen in years. Everyone just wanted to come out to support us that day.
Once you find a little girl's body, you want to bring them to justice. Frankly, you want to give them the death penalty right then. That's the human side of it. But there's a process, and you have to build the case properly. As a parent, you feel for the family, you feel for the community, but for him, you want to bring him to justice as swiftly as possible. Joseph Smith was charged with first-degree murder, with kidnapping of a child under 12, and then sexual battery on a child under 12.
The videotape was an amazing piece of evidence. You have a picture of at least the beginnings of that crime.
John Smith, he had to testify against his brother in a case where we're seeking the death penalty, and he did the right thing.
Watching my brother navigate through grief and loss, then I have to go and sit through a trial where they go through every single step of what happened to your loved one. It's excruciating. In a way, focusing on making sure that justice was served was a distraction from the grief and the loss that we had all experienced.
We know what's about to happen to Carly.
That's what makes that video so shocking, and you just want to reach through there, and you want to stop her, you want to stop him, you want Carly to scream, you want her to shout. A bad guy has grabbed her, and you can't fathom the trouble she's in, and you can't stop it.
The forensic lab ultimately testified in trial that those pinkish reddish cotton fibers found in the car were consistent with the pink shirt that Carly had on when she was found.
As the trial went on, evidence showed that she put up quite a big fight, but, you know, how can an 11-year-old overpower a 38-year-old man? The fear that she must have felt, she was all alone. Just such a horrible thought to have, to think about an 11-year-old girl being all by herself when this was happening to her. Really no words can describe the feeling that I get when I think about her last few moments. She must have been so scared.
The evidence was strong. There was no doubt the jury was going to find him guilty.
What we were all worried about was his sentencing. Our minds went right to the next thing. Let's get him the death penalty. That was our focus. If Carly didn't get to live, why should he get the chance to live?
We went into a penalty phase, which talked about the atrociousness of these crimes, about the cruelty of the crimes, and about the heinousness of the crimes.
And then the state asks the same jurors to pass a sentence of death on Joseph Smith. And he, by a 10-2 margin, was found guilty and was sentenced to death.
That was another sigh of relief from me and my family. We were all happy for this very small victory. What we didn't know was that it wasn't over yet.
There was a case that came out of the U.S. Supreme Court on the death penalty. And unfortunately, the Florida Supreme Court looks at that case, interprets that anything that was not unanimous was being reversed for sentencing, a new sentencing. He would still have life in prison. There was no question he would have life in prison. The question is, do we get the death penalty? In my eyes, my boss's eyes, law enforcement's eyes, and the victim's family's eyes. You can't do what he did to an 11-year-old girl and not receive the death penalty. So we were gearing up to do a resentencing, which means you have to, bring everybody back in, the medical examiner, present all the evidence to a new jury to seek the death penalty again.
While we were waiting for that to happen, I got a phone call from my mom to let me know that Joseph Smith was dead.
Joseph Smith died in prison of liver cancer. And I was happy. And I think most people, when I told them the news, felt the same.
It was surprisingly very emotional. I broke down and started crying. It was finally over. It was just a moment of like a sigh of relief that this is really over now. This battle has ended.
Carly's mom was a devoted mom and, wanted justice for her daughter. Unfortunately, she died before Joseph Smith died, and she didn't actually get to learn he had passed away in prison.
Carly's mother died of a drug overdose. It seemed like this was just her only coping mechanism. It didn't matter that Joseph Smith received a death sentence or probably even that he died. There's nothing that was going to fill the void that Carly's loss caused, and the family was just never going to be the same again.
Life wasn't the same when she lost Carly. He destroyed that family. The whole family it destroyed them.
I did go to Florida probably within a year after Carly's death. It felt special to go and visit Carly's school where she spent so much time and made friends.
The church where they found her body, they made a garden there for Carly. I go down in the garden, like on her birthdays, the holidays or whatever. I talk to her, just tell her what's going on and tell her we miss her and tell her we love her, that we won't forget her.
Not only did this horrible tragedy affect my immediate family, but it affected my extended family as well. I have a cousin, Matt. When Matt found out about Carly, he had the same feeling of helplessness that we all did, and it really impacted him, and he just wanted to do something to help.
Nothing was going to bring Carly back, but I wanted to make sure that it never happened to anyone else's family, and that inspired me to create the Rose Bruscia Educational Foundation. Carly is our image of our foundation, and we do everything in memory of Carly. But the motivation for naming it after my grandmother was so that I would never exploit Carly's name. So I just wanted to go to my local elementary school and talk to the kids in my neighborhood and tell them, these are the things that you need to do to stay safe. The program is in 92 countries across the globe. I'll always do this because of Carly's memory and in honor of Carly. So for me, it's the rest of my life.
I think about Carly every day. She wanted to be the life of the party. She loved being around other kids, be involved in what everyone else was doing. She just wanted to be part of it.
She would have been somebody special. You could see it. She was somebody special. I think she should be remembered like sunshine.
Butterflies kind of became the symbol of her still being with us. My brother often sees butterflies and thinks of her. He has a garden on his deck in his backyard, and a lot of the plants that he has kind of draw in the butterflies, and it's just something that reminds us of her.
Black Hollow 1978. Hidden evidence awakens a town's oldest secret. Nobody in Black Hollow ever agreed on the exact moment the town stopped sleeping. Some said it happened on an October night in 1978 when sirens cut through the valley and every porch light flickered on at once. Others insisted it started years earlier, buried beneath old grudges, quiet land deals, and conversations that ended the instant strangers entered the room. But the people who remembered best all carried the same expression. The look of individuals who had seen something terrible approach in slow motion and mistaken it for ordinary life. Because disasters rarely announce themselves. They arrive wearing familiar faces. They walk familiar roads. They drink coffee beside neighbors. They wave from pickup trucks. And by the time anyone recognizes what has happened, memory has already begun rewriting the details. Black Hollow was the kind of place maps almost apologized for including. 2,000 residents, one main street, a grain elevator visible from nearly every direction, church bells that governed weekends more effectively than clocks. The surrounding hills held old forests, abandoned mining paths, and stories passed down so many times that truth and folklore occupied the same fragile territory. People there believed in hard work, in privacy, in minding their own business. Sometimes those values built strong communities. Sometimes they built walls. And walls, no matter how well-intentioned, have an unfortunate habit of hiding things. On the evening of October 17, 1978, 26-year-old Evelyn Hart locked the doors of the Black Hollow Historical Society at precisely 8:23. The detail mattered because Evelyn believed details mattered. Always. She recorded everything. Times, dates, conversations, weather conditions. Most people collected photographs. Evelyn collected facts. Her tiny office above the town library overflowed with county records, handwritten interviews, newspaper clippings, and maps dating back nearly a century. She loved forgotten things. Loved rescuing stories from dust. Loved asking questions older residents preferred not to answer. Nobody considered that dangerous. At least not then. The air carried the first real bite of autumn. Leaves skittered across Main Street like nervous animals. Storefront lights disappeared one by one. Ordinary rhythms. Ordinary routines. Evelyn stepped outside carrying a leather satchel filled with notes she intended to organize at home. Witnesses later remembered small details. The green scarf. The yellow legal pad visible inside her bag. The way she paused beside the courthouse steps and looked back toward the old mill on the edge of town. Nobody knew why she looked. Nobody asked at the time. Human beings rarely investigate moments before they become important. Her car remained parked exactly where she had left it. A blue Ford sedan. Reliable. Unremarkable. The engine started. The headlights cut through gathering darkness. And for 47 years, no one would ever fully explain what happened next. The first indication that something was wrong arrived the following morning. Evelyn never missed breakfast with her father. Never. Harold Hart operated a hardware store on Main Street and measured life according to routines established over decades. 8 o'clock meant coffee. 8:15 meant eggs. 8:30 meant unlocking the shop. His daughter understood that, respected that, participated willingly. By 9 o'clock, concern replaced irritation. By 10, concern became fear. Sheriff Thomas Reed received the call at 10:14. 53 years old. Veteran of 1,000 ordinary problems. Runaway teenagers. Property disputes. Livestock wandering across county roads. Black Hollow had experienced tragedy before, but nothing that permanently altered its identity. Nothing people spoke about in lowered voices years later. Sheriff Reed initially assumed a simple explanation. Car trouble. Unexpected travel. Miscommunication. Reasonable possibilities. Reasonable possibilities disappear quickly when evidence refuses to cooperate. Evelyn's home remained untouched. Coffee cups still rested in the sink. Notes covered her dining room table. A half-finished article about local mining history sat inside her typewriter. Nothing suggested preparation for departure. Nothing suggested crisis. Her bed remained perfectly made. The realization spread through town with astonishing speed. By noon, people gathered outside the sheriff's office. By evening, search parties organized themselves without instructions. Flashlights moved across forests. Neighbors called her name into gathering darkness. The entire valley seemed to hold its breath. Then came the discovery that transformed concern into terror. Evelyn's Ford sat abandoned near Lantern Creek Road, 7 miles outside town. Driver's door closed. Keys missing. Purse untouched on the passenger seat. The leather satchel gone. So, were her notes. Sheriff Reed arrived shortly after sunset. Experienced officers learned to trust instincts while fearing them simultaneously. His instincts screamed that nothing about the scene felt natural. No signs of struggle. No damaged vegetation. No obvious evidence. Yet an overwhelming absence lingered in the air. People do not simply evaporate. They leave traces. Stories. Mistakes. Evidence. Something. Black Hollow offered nothing. Search teams expanded operations through the night. Dogs followed scents that ended abruptly near the creek. Volunteers combed fields until exhaustion overcame determination. Families opened their homes to strangers carrying flashlights and bad news. The entire community united against uncertainty. For a brief moment, shared purpose outweighed fear. That moment never returned. Because on the second day, rumors began. Rumors always arrive before facts. They travel faster, require less evidence, feed on silence. Someone claimed Evelyn argued with an unknown man at the diner the previous week. Someone else remembered seeing unfamiliar vehicles near the abandoned mill. Others insisted she had become obsessed with local history surrounding an incident nobody discussed openly anymore. The details shifted. The anxiety remained constant. Sheriff Reed fought desperately against speculation. He needed witnesses, not storytellers. Reality, unfortunately, rarely honors such distinctions. By the third day, reporters arrived. Regional newspapers smelled mystery. Television crews set up equipment near the courthouse. Black Hollow found itself exposed to the outside world. Residents disliked that intensely. Privacy formed part of the town's identity. Now cameras documented grief. Microphones amplified uncertainty. Questions multiplied faster than answers. Who was Evelyn Hart? Why had she been researching old mining records so aggressively? What exactly had she discovered during her interviews with retired workers? Nobody possessed complete information. Not even her father. Harold Hart knew his daughter chased forgotten stories. He admired her dedication. But he admitted something that immediately captured investigators' attention. She believed somebody changed the official history of Black Hollow. The statement landed like thunder. Changed it how? Sheriff Reed asked. Harold simply shook his head. She never explained completely. Said records didn't match memories. Said people remembered things they refused to put in writing. The observations sounded academic. Harmless. Until detectives searched Evelyn's office. Inside filing cabinets and cardboard boxes, they discovered years of meticulous research. Property transfers, meeting transcripts, personal interviews, handwritten notes connecting names across decades, patterns, relationships, questions. One phrase appeared repeatedly in her journals. Who benefited from the silence? Nobody understood what she meant. Not entirely, but the wording disturbed everyone who read it. Silence regarding what? What hidden event required beneficiaries? And why did a young historian investigating local memories suddenly vanish without explanation? The mystery deepened. Old residents grew uncomfortable. Conversations ended abruptly when deputies approached. Men who normally enjoyed sharing stories suddenly remembered nothing. Women who knew every family secret in 3 counties avoided eye contact. Fear moved quietly through Black Hollow. Invisible, persistent, contagious. A week passed. No body. No ransom demand. No confirmed sightings. Nothing. The absence itself became unbearable. Humans process tragedy through certainty. Death hurts, but uncertainty corrodes. Every telephone call carries possibility. Every knock on the door ignites hope and dread simultaneously. Families survive funerals. They struggle to survive endless waiting. Harold Hart stopped sleeping. Neighbors found him sitting on his porch before dawn, staring toward Lantern Creek Road as though determination alone might force answers into existence. He repeated the same sentence to anyone willing to listen. My daughter found something. The conviction never weakened. Authorities remained cautious. Evidence did not support conclusions. Evidence barely supported questions. Yet privately, Sheriff Reed admitted similar concerns. Evelyn's missing satchel troubled him deeply. People abandoning vehicles often leave possessions behind. Purses, coats, documents. But someone had taken her research. Only her research. Everything else remained untouched. Intentional actions create intentional questions. What information deserved removal? Who understood its value? The investigation expanded into neighboring counties. State authorities offered assistance. Volunteers arrived from distant communities. Black Hollow became the center of regional attention. Children overheard frightened conversations. Businesses closed early. Churches filled beyond capacity. The town that once prized privacy now existed beneath an unforgiving spotlight. And still, silence answered every question. Then, 11 days after Evelyn disappeared, a discovery near the old Mercer mine changed everything. A volunteer searcher found scattered pages from a yellow legal pad. Water-damaged, mud-stained, but recognizable. Evelyn's handwriting covered every inch. Most words remained illegible. Nature had consumed them. One sentence survived clearly enough to read. They didn't bury the truth. They built the town on top of it. Sheriff Reed stared at the page for a very long time, because the sentence felt less like historical research and more like warning. A warning from someone who believed she stood near a revelation. A revelation powerful enough to frighten people, or powerful enough to destroy them. Night settled over Black Hollow once again. Porch lights glowed against surrounding darkness. Families locked doors they once left open. Neighbors watched unfamiliar cars with newfound suspicion. And somewhere beyond the hills, beyond official reports and organized search grids, a mystery had already begun transforming from current event into something far more dangerous. A legend. The kind that survives generations. The kind that changes communities. The kind that waits patiently for decades before deciding to speak. The 12th day after Evelyn Hart vanished began with fog so thick that Black Hollow seemed to disappear from the world. Church steeples floated above white emptiness. Storefronts emerged like ghosts. The surrounding hills vanished entirely. Old residents called it miner's weather. The kind of mourning that reminded people how easily human beings could be swallowed by the land they believed they understood. Sheriff Thomas Reed stood outside the county building with a paper cup of coffee growing cold in his hands and stared into that endless gray curtain. He had worked accidents, floods, violent disputes, farm tragedies. Nothing resembled this. Nothing resembled the feeling of chasing an absence that seemed to grow larger every single day. Because Evelyn Hart had not merely disappeared. She had taken certainty with her. The town no longer trusted its own memory. And memory, once doubted, becomes a dangerous thing. Inside the sheriff's office, walls filled with maps, colored pins, timelines, witness statements, photographs, the architecture of investigation, order imposed against chaos. Yet the more information investigators collected, the stranger the picture became. Evelyn's final weeks formed a pattern impossible to ignore. She had visited retired miners, former council members, families connected to land disputes dating back 30 years, people who shared only one thing in common. Whenever conversations approached a particular period between 1958 and 1962, they became uncomfortable, abrupt, defensive. Doors closed politely. Questions remained unanswered. Deputy Ellen Morris, 29 years old and new to Black Hollow, noticed what lifelong residents overlooked. Outsiders see patterns insiders learn to ignore. She spent hours reviewing Evelyn's interview logs. The same phrase appeared repeatedly beside different names. Refused to discuss the fire. No explanation. No details. Just those 4 words. The fire. What fire? Official county records listed several minor incidents. Bonfires. Electrical accidents. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing capable of haunting an entire community decades later. Yet Evelyn had underlined the phrase multiple times. Red ink. Heavy pressure. Importance. Deputy Morris brought the observation to Sheriff Reed. He frowned immediately, because he remembered something. Not clearly. Not completely. A story his father mentioned years earlier. An accident near Mercer Mine. Several injuries. Confusion regarding official reports. People stopped talking about it eventually. The way communities stopped talking about many things. Not through conspiracy. Through exhaustion. Through necessity. Through the quiet agreement that moving forward matters more than looking back. Or, so they tell themselves. That afternoon, Reed visited Judge Arthur Bell. 78 years old. Retired. Born and raised in Black Hollow. If anyone remembered forgotten history, it was Arthur Bell. The old man welcomed him politely. Der. Silence. The familiar rituals of rural conversation. Then Reed asked a simple question. What happened in 1961? Everything changed. Arthur's expression hardened immediately. Nothing happened. The answer came too quickly. Too cleanly. Sheriff Reed noticed. So, did the old judge. An uncomfortable pause settled between them. Finally, Arthur sighed. You're asking because of the Hart girl. Yes. Another silence. Longer this time. When Arthur spoke again, his voice carried the weight of old decisions. Sometimes communities survive because certain arguments are allowed to die. Reed leaned forward. What arguments? The judge stared through the window. The kind where nobody wins. The kind where truth arrives too late to help anyone. The answer infuriated him. Not because it lacked wisdom. Because it lacked information. Everyone offered philosophy. Nobody offered facts. By evening, rumors regarding Evelyn's research spread further. People claimed she discovered hidden financial records. Others insisted she found evidence of corruption. Some believed she uncovered family secrets reaching back generations. Fear filled gaps where certainty should have existed. Fear always does. Meanwhile, Harold Hart remained convinced of one thing. His daughter had never intended to leave Black Hollow. Never. She loved the town, loved its people, loved its history. But love and curiosity often travel together. And curiosity can become threatening when directed toward memories people prefer to preserve in simpler forms. Harold opened boxes from Evelyn's childhood. School papers, letters, old notebooks, searching for anything investigators might have missed. Inside one weathered journal from college, he found a sentence that made his blood run cold. People don't erase history. They replace it with versions easier to live beside. The handwriting belonged to a 20-year-old Evelyn. Years before her disappearance. Years before her obsession with local archives intensified. The idea had lived inside her for a long time. Questions shaped her identity. Not hobbies. Not interests. Identity. Sheriff Reed added the journal to growing evidence files. He could feel the investigation shifting. No longer simply a missing person case. Something larger. Something rooted in memory itself. Then came the first anonymous telephone call. 9:42 in the evening. Static. Breathing. A man's voice deliberately lowered. Stop digging where old men buried their mistakes. Click. Gone. The entire conversation lasted 7 seconds. 7 seconds changed everything. Because for the first time, someone acknowledged digging. Acknowledged burial. Acknowledged mistakes. The call provided no names. No evidence. Yet its implications thundered through Black Hollow. Word spread quickly despite official efforts. Panic followed. Residents locked doors earlier. Parents kept children indoors. People who once gathered on porches retreated behind curtains. The town began watching itself. And self-conscious communities reveal very little. State investigators arrived 2 days later. Fresh eyes. Fresh skepticism. Detective Richard Cole from Louisville reviewed every document carefully. He possessed none of Black Hollow's inherited assumptions. No childhood memories. No loyalty to local narratives. Outsiders ask dangerous questions precisely because they owe nothing to tradition. After reading Evelyn's notes, Cole reached an immediate conclusion. She wasn't researching history. She was auditing memory. The distinction stunned everyone. Explain. Sheriff Reed requested. Cole tapped the pages thoughtfully. History asks what happened. Memory asks why people remember events differently. Your missing woman cared about discrepancies. The observation felt correct. Painfully correct. Evelyn collected contradictions. Official reports on one side. Human recollections on the other. Whenever the two failed to align, she investigated further. What she found remained unknown. But she clearly believed something important hid inside those inconsistencies. That weekend, volunteers discovered more pages from her missing legal pad. Scattered across woodland near Mercer Mine. Most destroyed. Nature had shown little mercy. Yet fragments survived. Names. dates, arrows connecting individuals, and one phrase written repeatedly. Who chose forgetting? The words unsettled investigators profoundly. Forgetting usually happens naturally. People age. Details fade. Life continues. But Evelyn suggested choice. Intentional forgetting. Collective forgetting. The possibility felt deeply uncomfortable. Because if forgetting could be chosen, remembering might represent rebellion. Black Hollow held a candlelight vigil 17 days after Evelyn vanished. Hundreds attended. The entire valley glowed beneath autumn darkness. Prayers filled the air. Songs echoed against distant hills. Yet beneath shared grief, another emotion emerged. Suspicion. Neighbors examined one another differently. Old friendships carried unspoken questions. Who knew more than they admitted? Who remembered things they refused to discuss? Communities fracture quietly. Not through dramatic confrontations. Through hesitation. Through uncertainty. Through the slow realization that familiarity offers no guarantee of truth. Sheriff Reed addressed the gathering briefly. His words were careful, measured, professional, but privately, certainty abandoned him. He sensed invisible walls everywhere. Not legal walls. Cultural walls. Built over decades. Maintained through silence mistaken for wisdom. And Evelyn Hart, with notebooks and questions and relentless curiosity, had apparently walked straight toward them. After the vigil ended, an elderly woman approached Deputy Morris. Martha Kincaid, 86 years old, hands trembling, eyes sharp. "I should have spoken sooner," she whispered. The statement electrified investigators. Inside her small farmhouse, Martha revealed something astonishing. Evelyn visited her 3 weeks before disappearing. Asked about Mercer Mine. Asked about 1961. Asked about the night people stopped telling the same story. Deputy Morris leaned closer. "What did you tell her?" Martha closed her eyes. "I told her that some truths survive only because everyone agrees not to touch them." The sentence hung heavily in the room. "What happened at Mercer Mine?" The old woman opened her eyes slowly. "People died. Maybe not in the way records claim. Maybe not in the numbers records claim. And afterward, important men decided Black Hollow needed peace more than honesty." Silence consumed the room. No accusations. No proof. Just fragments. But fragments possess extraordinary power when they align with existing fears. Before investigators left, Martha offered one final observation. That Hart girl wasn't afraid of ghosts. She was afraid of the people who create them. Outside, night settled across Black Hollow once more. The hills remained silent. The abandoned mine rested beneath decades of rain and forgotten promises. And somewhere inside the darkness separating memory from history, a young woman had apparently discovered that the two things were never meant to coexist peacefully. The town still searched for Evelyn Hart. What nobody understood yet was that Evelyn had been searching for Black Hollow itself. And she may have found something the town spent generations trying desperately not to remember. Rain arrived without warning on the 19th day. Not a storm. Not violent. Just a steady, relentless curtain falling across Black Hollow as though the mountains themselves had decided to erase footprints, wash away evidence, and remind everyone that nature keeps secrets better than people ever could. The town grew quieter. Even grief seemed muted beneath gray skies. Store owners lowered their voices. Children stopped asking questions in front of adults. Church gatherings lasted longer. Conversations ended faster. Fear had matured into something heavier. Expectation. People expected bad news. The only uncertainty involved its shape. Sheriff Thomas Reed hated that feeling. Because expectation changes behavior. Witnesses begin editing memories to match likely outcomes. Rumors harden into unofficial truths. The search for facts becomes a battle against imagination. Inside the sheriff's office, the investigation expanded while clarity diminished. State Detective Richard Cole approached the case like an outsider examining an ancient civilization. He ignored assumptions, ignored traditions, ignored the invisible social rules governing Black Hollow that made certain residents deeply uncomfortable, which, in Cole's experience, often meant he was asking appropriate questions. He spent 3 consecutive days reviewing county archives, old newspaper collections, council minutes, property records, mining reports. The deeper he looked into the years surrounding 1961, the stranger everything became. Information existed. Too much information in some places, almost none in others. Normal communities generate paper trails. Arguments produce records. Disasters create documentation. Human beings write things down. Yet, an entire stretch of Black Hollow's history felt strangely compressed, simplified, sanitized. The official narrative described an accidental fire near Mercer Mine, 3 injuries, temporary closure. Operations resumed months later. Case closed. Move forward. Simple. Too simple. Evelyn Hart had clearly recognized that. Her notes contained question marks beside every official account. She underlined dates, circled names, connected families through handwritten diagrams resembling constellations. She believed memory contradicted paperwork, and memory, unlike documents, cannot be archived neatly. Cole found one particular notebook especially unsettling. On the inside cover, Evelyn had written a single sentence. If everyone remembers differently, perhaps someone taught them how to remember. The words lingered, because they suggested intention, not confusion, not fading recollection, instruction, collective agreement. The possibility disturbed him profoundly. Meanwhile, Deputy Ellen Morris pursued a different angle. The missing satchel. Every investigator returned to it eventually. Evelyn's purse remained untouched. Her vehicle remained intact. Only her research disappeared. The distinction mattered. Someone interested in theft would take valuables. Someone interested in escape would take essentials. Someone interested in information takes information. Morris visited the library where Evelyn worked. Dust floated through afternoon sunlight. The building felt frozen in time. Her office remained exactly as she left it. Typewriter loaded. Books stacked in precarious towers. Coffee mug beside county maps. Life interrupted mid-sentence. Among her belongings, Morris discovered a list folded inside a history textbook. No title. No explanation. Just 12 names. Beside each name appeared a symbol. A circle, a triangle, or an X. The meaning remained unknown. But one thing became immediately clear. Every person listed held influence in Black Hollow during the early 1960s. Council members, mine supervisors, business owners, church leaders, architects of community life. Morris showed the document to Sheriff Reed. He recognized several names instantly. Men celebrated for stabilizing the town during difficult years. Respected figures. Dead now. Mostly. Their reputations remained untouchable. At least until Evelyn began asking questions. The realization sent an uncomfortable chill through the room. That evening, Harold Hart received visitors. Neighbors bringing food. Offering support.
Repeating familiar promises.
We're praying. We're here for you. We'll find her. Good intentions. Necessary intentions. Yet, Harold noticed something strange. Nobody mentioned Evelyn's work. Nobody discussed her research. As though her disappearance existed independently from the questions consuming her final months. Eventually, frustration overwhelmed politeness. She found something, Harold said. The room became silent. A family friend cleared his throat. Maybe she was simply curious.
No.
Harold's voice remained steady. Curious people don't carry fear in their eyes. The statement changed everything. Fear? Someone asked. He nodded. 2 weeks before she vanished, Evelyn stopped walking home after dark. Started locking doors. Checked windows repeatedly. When asked why, she offered the same answer every time. People become dangerous when memories are threatened. Nobody knew how to respond. Because the sentence sounded dramatic. Impossible. Yet nothing about the previous 19 days resembled ordinary life. Across town, Detective Cole met with retired miner Joseph Mercer, 79 years old, grandson of the man who founded the mine carrying their family name. Joseph possessed a reputation for honesty, blunt honesty, the kind that survives because age removes consequences. Cole asked directly, "What happened in 1961?" The old man stared at his hands. A long silence followed. Then he spoke. Something burned.
People died.
And afterward, important families decided tragedy needed boundaries. What does that mean? It means grief spreads if you let it. So they contained it.
Contain the story. Contain the blame. Contain the memories.
Joseph looked toward the mountains. My generation believed that was wisdom. Do you still believe that? Another silence.
No.
The answer arrived quietly. Too many ghosts. Those two words echoed through Cole's mind. Too many ghosts. Not supernatural ghosts. Human ghosts. Unfinished truths. Unspoken accusations.
Memory de nid propre existence.
Perhaps communities create hauntings long before abandoned buildings or midnight legends. Perhaps hauntings begin the moment people agree that silence is preferable to honesty. The investigation gained another disturbing element on day 22. A second anonymous phone call. Different voice. Older.
Calmer.
Some foundations crack when you dig beneath them.
Click. Gone.
8 words. Nothing more. Yet those 8 words accomplished something devastating. They transformed Evelyn's research into perceived threat. Foundations. Not mistakes. Not crimes. Foundations. The implication suggested entire structures rested upon concealed truths. Sheriff Reed ordered the calls analyzed. No results. Payphones. Untraceable. The technology of rural America protected anonymity with remarkable efficiency. Night descended early. Autumn deepened. Black Hollow felt smaller with each passing day, as though the valley itself tightened around its inhabitants. People watched one another carefully. Ordinary conversations carried hidden meanings. Even children sensed change. The old confidence had vanished. In its place stood uncertainty wrapped in politeness. Deputy Morris spent that evening reading through Evelyn's interview transcripts. One conversation caught her attention immediately. Interview subject, Reverend Samuel Price. Date, September 29, 1978. Question, why don't people discuss Mercer Mine anymore? Answer, because healing required agreement. Question, agreement about what? Answer, about what mattered more. Question, truth or peace? Long pause noted in Evelyn's handwriting. Final answer. At the time, we believed they were the same thing. Morris closed the notebook slowly. The sentence explained everything and nothing simultaneously. An entire generation convinced itself that truth and peace walked together. What happened when they did not? What happened when maintaining peace required reshaping truth? The questions lingered like smoke. Outside, rain continued falling across abandoned tracks, leading toward Mercer Mine. The forest absorbed water. The earth remembered every footstep ever taken across its surface. And somewhere beneath decades of official reports and carefully preserved reputations, the past remained exactly where Evelyn Hart believed it existed. Not dead. Not forgotten. Waiting. Waiting for someone stubborn enough to ask why so many good people spent so many years protecting the same silence. Black Hollow still searched for a missing woman. But beneath that search, another investigation had quietly begun. An investigation into memory itself. And memory, unlike evidence, possesses one terrifying characteristic. It can be inherited, generation after generation, until nobody remembers where truth ended and the story everyone agreed to tell first began. The 24th day brought sunlight for the first time in nearly a week. It should have felt hopeful. Instead, Black Hollow looked exposed. Rain had hidden things. Fog had softened edges. Sunlight demanded clarity. And clarity remained the one thing nobody possessed. Main Street reopened to ordinary rhythms with forced determination. The hardware store unlocked at 8. The diner served coffee at 6. Children returned to school carrying lunchboxes and questions adults refused to answer. Life insisted on continuing. Life always insists. But beneath familiar routines, something fundamental had shifted. The town no longer trusted silence. It feared what silence might contain. Sheriff Thomas Reed recognized the change immediately. Witnesses who previously claimed ignorance now remembered fragments. Tiny details. Half-finished stories. Moments dismissed decades earlier. Fear loosens memory in unpredictable ways. So, does guilt. That morning, a retired postal worker named Helen Ward requested a private meeting. 72 years old. Resident of Black Hollow her entire life. Soft-spoken. Reliable. The kind of person communities build themselves around without ever fully appreciating. She arrived carrying an old metal box. Inside rested photographs, letters, newspaper clippings, and one object that stopped the investigation cold. A flyer, yellowed with age, dated August 1961. Community Unity Meeting. The language seemed ordinary at first glance. Come together, heal together, move forward together. Yet a sentence near the bottom demanded attention. The future of Black Hollow depends upon our willingness to leave painful misunderstandings in the past. Misunderstandings. Plural. Not tragedy. Not accident. Misunderstandings. Detective Richard Cole studied the paper carefully.
Who organized this?
Helen hesitated. Everyone important. Council members. Church leaders. Mine management. Business owners. Why keep it hidden? The old woman sighed. Because after a while, people stopped asking what happened. They only asked how to move on. Her answer echoed every conversation investigators had endured since Evelyn vanished. Move on. Leave it alone. Protect peace. Same philosophy. Different voices. The consistency frightened Cole more than contradiction ever could. By afternoon, Deputy Ellen Morris uncovered another detail from Evelyn's research. The 12 names marked with symbols in her notebook shared one additional connection. Every one of them attended the Community Unity meeting. Circles. Triangles. X marks. No explanation. But definitely intentional. Evelyn had categorized them. Studied them. Perhaps understood relationships nobody else noticed. Sheriff Reed pinned the names across a wall inside the briefing room. Threads connected families. Businesses. Political offices, church leadership. The network resembled roots beneath a forest floor. Invisible from above. Essential underneath. Black Hollow wasn't simply a town. It was a web of inherited loyalties. And Evelyn Hart had apparently begun mapping it. That realization introduced a disturbing possibility. What if her danger had never come from discovering one secret? What if she threatened an entire structure built upon selective memory? Outside the sheriff's office, reporters continued gathering. Regional newspapers demanded progress. Television crews wanted answers. The country loved mysteries. Communities trapped inside them rarely shared that enthusiasm. Mayor Leonard Briggs addressed citizens during an evening meeting. His speech emphasized unity, cooperation,
faith.
Words chosen carefully. Yet one sentence drew immediate attention. We cannot allow old wounds to destroy what generations built together. The room fell silent. People exchanged glances. Because nobody mentioned old wounds.
Nobody asked about them.
The mayor had introduced the concept voluntarily. Sheriff Reed noticed. So did Detective Cole. After the meeting, Cole approached him directly. What wounds? The mayor smiled politely. Historical disagreements. Nothing more. The answer felt rehearsed. Safe. Meaningless. History, Cole understood, becomes most interesting precisely when influential people describe it as unimportant. Meanwhile, Harold Hart spent evenings inside Evelyn's office. He touched nothing. Changed nothing. Simply sat among her books and papers. Trying to understand the daughter he loved completely, yet perhaps never fully knew. Parents witness lives. They do not always witness obsessions. Inside a drawer he had overlooked previously, Harold found a small cassette recorder. 3 tapes remained, unlabeled, untouched. Investigators gathered immediately. The first tape contained ordinary interviews, retired teachers, local shopkeepers, historical anecdotes. The second offered similar material. Interesting, not revolutionary. The third tape changed the atmosphere entirely. Static. Footsteps.
Wind.
Then Evelyn's voice.
Soft.
Focused. If you're listening to this, she said, I'm probably being overly cautious. Silence filled the room, because the recording sounded personal.
Private.
Not intended for publication. She continued. People keep telling me certain stories don't matter anymore. But the harder they insist, the more convinced I become that they matter enormously. A pause. The sound of papers shifting. I've begun noticing something strange. Nobody remembers 1961 the same way. Not one person. Yet everyone reaches the same conclusion. Leave it alone. Another pause. That doesn't happen naturally. The tape ended abruptly. No names. No accusations. Just intuition. But intuition recorded before disappearance carries extraordinary weight. Sheriff Reed listened 3 times. The final sentence refused to leave his mind. That doesn't happen naturally. What exactly had Evelyn recognized? Human memory is imperfect, contradictory, chaotic. Different recollections should produce different conclusions. Yet Black Hollow produced identical advice. Silence. Move forward. Let it rest. An unnatural consensus. Night arrived early. Autumn deepened further. The hills surrounding Mercer mine glowed red and gold beneath fading sunlight. Beautiful. Ancient. Indifferent. Deputy Morris returned to Martha Kincaid's farmhouse hoping for additional clarity. The elderly woman welcomed her inside.
Da.
Warm bread. The rituals of another generation. This time, Morris asked a direct question. Did people lie about what happened? Martha considered carefully.
No.
Not exactly. Then what? They agreed on which truths deserve daylight. The distinction felt chilling. Who decided? People with influence. People afraid. People convinced they were saving the town. Morris leaned forward. Saving it from what? The old woman looked toward the window. From itself. Silence followed. Because perhaps that represented the deepest fear of all. Not outsiders. Not criminals. Not random violence. Communities destroying themselves through unresolved grief and competing versions of reality. Maybe Black Hollow had survived by narrowing acceptable memories. Maybe Evelyn tried expanding them again. And maybe somebody believed expansion carried unacceptable risks. That night, another discovery emerged. Volunteers searching near Lantern Creek found the leather strap from Evelyn's missing satchel. Weathered. Partially buried. No bag. No documents. Just the strap. A small piece of absence. Forensic examination revealed nothing useful. Time and rain had done their work, yet its location mattered. Nearly 3 miles from where her car was discovered. Movement. Deliberate movement. Someone had carried her research deeper into the wilderness. Someone understood its importance. Sheriff Reed stood beside the evidence table long after everyone else departed. The strap looked ordinary. Cheap leather. Mass-produced hardware. Nothing remarkable. Yet entire mysteries sometimes rest upon ordinary things. A missing strap. A missing notebook. A missing woman. And an entire town apparently united by invisible agreements formed 17 years earlier. Outside, Black Hollow settled into uneasy sleep. Porch lights glowed. Dogs barked in distant yards. Wind moved through trees older than every secret humans tried preserving beneath them. The investigation had entered dangerous territory now. No longer searching merely for Evelyn Hart. Searching for the reasons so many people believed forgetting represented virtue. And somewhere inside that reason, hidden beneath decades of good intentions and carefully maintained silence, lay a truth powerful enough to frighten an entire community. The question no longer involved whether Evelyn found something. The question involved whether Black Hollow could survive hearing it spoken aloud. The 27th morning arrived with frost on the courthouse steps. Winter had not officially begun, yet Black Hollow already carried the feeling of a season changing too quickly. The mountains looked sharper, the air sounded emptier, and the town itself seemed to move more carefully, as though every resident feared stepping on memories better left undisturbed. Sheriff Thomas Reed had stopped asking whether Evelyn Hart discovered something important. That question no longer mattered. The evidence answered it repeatedly. The notebooks, the recordings, the missing satchel, the anonymous calls. Everything pointed toward the same conclusion. Evelyn found a door. The real mystery involved what existed on the other side. Inside the sheriff's office, the investigation board now resembled a map of inherited silence. Names connected through colored strings. Families intertwined across generations. Church leaders beside mine supervisors. Business owners beside county officials. Not conspirators. Something more complicated. Architects. Builders of a community narrative. People who, decades earlier, believed stability required agreement. The phrase appeared constantly in historical documents. Agreement. Unity. Healing. Moving forward. Beautiful words. Dangerous words when they become substitutes for truth. Detective Richard Cole reviewed Evelyn's final calendar entries. One date stood apart from everything else. October 15th, 2 days before she vanished. Only 3 handwritten words occupied the square. Meet Eli Turner. No address. No explanation. No notes. The name sent immediate ripples through town. Because Eli Turner still lived. 91 years old. Former foreman at Mercer Mine. Widower. Recluse. A man who rarely left his property and spoke to almost nobody. Black Hollow treated him with peculiar respect. Not affection. Not fear. Something older. The kind of respect communities reserve for individuals carrying memories too heavy for ordinary conversation. Sheriff Reed and Cole drove to his farmhouse that afternoon. The road twisted through hills painted gold and crimson by late autumn. Leaves gathered against fences. Abandoned equipment rested beneath rust and silence. Everything looked frozen in a different century. Eli Turner opened the door before they knocked, as though he had been expecting visitors. His eyes immediately found the sheriff. Then the detective. Finally he spoke. The Hart girl disappeared because she asked questions nobody asks twice. The sentence struck with astonishing force.
No greeting.
No confusion. Only certainty. Sheriff Reed maintained composure. You met with Evelyn? A long pause.
Yes.
What did she want?
Truth.
The old man laughed softly. Everybody wants truth until truth presents the bill. They entered the house. Dusty books lined the walls. Mining photographs covered entire hallways. Generations preserved in black and white. Eli sat near a wood stove and folded his hands. She came here 3 times, he said. Kept bringing old records. Old maps. Asking why names vanished from official documents after 1961. Detective Cole leaned forward.
Did they?
Another pause.
Yes.
The answer arrived like falling stone. Whose names? Men who died. Men who left. Men who became inconvenient. Silence consumed the room. Sheriff Reed spoke carefully. The official reports mention 3 injuries. Eli looked directly at him. Official reports mention many things. The distinction landed heavily. Not denial. Not confirmation. Merely separation between records and reality. What happened at Mercer Mine?
Cole asked.
The old man stared into the fire. People panicked. Leaders made choices.
Some honest.
Some not. And afterward, everybody convinced themselves peace mattered more than accuracy. The same theme. Again. Relentless. Like a hymn repeated across generations. But then Eli said something nobody expected. Your missing woman believed memory itself had been managed. Sheriff Reed felt his pulse quicken. Managed? She said communities tell stories the same way gardeners trim trees. Remove what threatens the shape they prefer. The metaphor felt disturbingly elegant. Too elegant to ignore. Did you agree with her? Eli smiled sadly. I told her she was 20 years too late.
Why?
Because by now nobody remembers where the trimming started. The conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. Names emerged. Historical tensions surfaced. No criminal admissions. No revelations capable of solving Evelyn's disappearance. Yet an unmistakable picture formed. Black Hollow had not hidden one event. It had inherited an entire philosophy. Protect the future. Minimize the past.
Preserve unity.
And over time, that philosophy became indistinguishable from morality itself. When Reed and Cole finally departed, Eli offered one final warning. If you uncover everything, don't expect gratitude. Truth changes communities. Not everybody survives the change. Night settled across the valley. Cold winds moved through empty mining roads. And somewhere beyond official timelines and witness statements, the investigation continued evolving into something far larger than anyone anticipated. Meanwhile, Deputy Ellen Morris examined another piece of Evelyn's work. A map. Hand-drawn. Meticulous. Dozens of locations circled in red. Homes. Churches. Meeting halls. Abandoned buildings. The circles formed a pattern. A route. Not geographical. Social. Places where influential conversations occurred after the Mercer incident. Places where decisions happened. Places where memory itself may have been negotiated. At the center of everything sat one structure. St. Matthew's Community Hall. Built in 1959. Still standing. Still used for holiday gatherings and charity events. According to Evelyn's notes, the community unity meeting took place there, as did several private sessions in the months afterward. Morris shared the discovery immediately. Sheriff Reed arranged access for the following morning. The building appeared ordinary. Wooden floors. Old folding chairs. Photographs lining the entrance. Nothing remarkable. Until Detective Cole noticed a locked storage room near the rear stage. Caretaker records indicated it hadn't been opened in years. The key required effort to locate. Dust covered everything inside. Boxes. Old banners. Community event decorations. And one forgotten filing cabinet. Metal. Rusting. Untouched. The drawer resisted at first. Then opened. Inside rested meeting transcripts. Attendance sheets. Handwritten minutes. Dozens of documents. History waiting patiently in darkness. Sheriff Reed turned pages slowly. Every sentence emphasized reconciliation, healing, collective responsibility. But buried among routine discussions appeared one extraordinary line. For the sake of Black Hollow's future, the official account shall remain the only account presented publicly. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Because the sentence changed everything. Not proof of criminal activity. Not evidence of Evelyn's fate. Something potentially more unsettling. Evidence of intention.
Someone.
Multiple people. Consciously selected one version of events above all others. Detective Cole read the line again. The official account shall remain the only account. History wasn't forgotten. History was curated. The realization sent a chill through every person in the room. Outside, evening settled over Black Hollow. Porch lights flickered alive. Families gathered around dinner tables. Children laughed without understanding the weight carried by previous generations. Life continued, as it always does. Yet beneath ordinary existence, old decisions had begun emerging from storage rooms and fading memories. Evelyn Hart spent years searching for hidden evidence. Perhaps she found it. Perhaps she understood something far more frightening than a single secret. Perhaps she realized entire communities possess the power to reshape memory until future generations inherit comfort instead of truth. And perhaps someone believed that discovery should never leave the hills surrounding Black Hollow. The investigation no longer asked what happened in 1961. It asked who decided how everyone else would remember it. And somewhere within that answer waited the reason a young historian vanished into autumn darkness with a satchel full of questions and a conviction that silence, no matter how noble its intentions, always demands payment eventually. The 30th day arrived with the first hard freeze of the season. Black Hollow woke beneath a thin layer of ice. Fence posts glittered. Truck windshields turned opaque. The abandoned roads leading toward Mercer Mine looked less like pathways and more like scars carved into the mountainside. Winter was approaching, and winter changes investigations. Ground hardens. Trails disappear. Hope acquires deadlines. Sheriff Thomas Reed understood the mathematics of cold weather. Every passing week reduced possibilities. Every storm buried evidence beneath another layer of time. Yet for the first time since Evelyn Hart vanished, he felt movement. Not resolution. Movement. The locked filing cabinet at St. Matthew's Community Hall had changed everything. The documents inside carried no confessions. No criminal admissions. No dramatic revelations suitable for newspaper headlines. They carried something more subtle. Intent. People had gathered. People had discussed competing versions of reality. And people had collectively chosen one story over another. That choice echoed through 17 years of Black Hollow history. Detective Richard Cole spread the recovered meeting minutes across a conference table. Certain phrases appeared repeatedly. Community stability. Shared responsibility. Preventing division. Avoiding harmful speculation. The language sounded compassionate. Reasonable. Even admirable. Until viewed beside Evelyn's disappearance. Then every sentence acquired sharper edges. Because compassion and concealment sometimes occupy uncomfortable proximity. Deputy Ellen Morris discovered another detail hidden inside the documents. Attendance lists. Dozens of names. Yet several signatures appeared only as initials. No full identification. No official explanation.
EH, CM, RT, JW.
Ghosts inside paperwork. People present without truly existing in the record. Evelyn had circled those initials repeatedly in her own notes. She recognized their importance.
Perhaps she even identified them.
If so, the answers vanished with her missing satchel. The absence of that leather bag haunted everyone. It had become more than evidence. It represented unfinished thought. A conversation interrupted forever. Meanwhile, Black Hollow itself continued transforming. The town had divided into two quiet camps. Those who believed the past should remain buried. And those who suddenly questioned everything they inherited. The division rarely produced arguments. Arguments required direct confrontation. This was colder. Neighbors greeting one another politely while wondering what secrets previous generations carried. Church members sitting together while privately questioning old stories. Trust eroding one respectful conversation at a time. Mayor Leonard Briggs felt the pressure intensely. His office received letters daily. Some demanded transparency. Others warned against reopening ancient wounds. One message contained only a single sentence. A town cannot survive if every memory stands trial. The mayor read it repeatedly, because part of him agreed, and another part feared agreement itself. That evening, Harold Hart invited Sheriff Reed to Evelyn's house. The old man looked exhausted. 30 days without answers ages people differently than ordinary grief. He carried a cardboard box discovered in the attic. Childhood belongings. School assignments. University papers. Nothing obviously connected to the investigation. Until they found a debate essay written when Evelyn was 16.
Topic.
Is social harmony more important than historical truth? Sheriff Reed felt a strange chill. The essay argued passionately against selective memory. Young Evelyn wrote, "Communities that hide painful truths do not eliminate pain. They transfer it forward, asking future generations to carry burdens they never chose." The words seemed prophetic, almost impossibly so. Harold sat quietly after reading them. She always believed remembering was a form of responsibility. The statement lingered. Responsibility. Not curiosity. Not obsession. Responsibility. Perhaps that explained everything. Evelyn never saw herself as exposing scandals. She saw herself as caring for history honestly. And honesty, unfortunately, can threaten systems built upon gentler versions of reality. 2 days later, another anonymous communication arrived. No telephone this time. No newspaper clippings. A handwritten note left beneath the windshield wiper of Sheriff Reed's truck. Simple.
Direct.
The dead accepted peace. Why can't the living? No signature.
No fingerprints.
Nothing. Yet the message carried profound implications. Whoever wrote it believed silence honored the dead, believed reopening old questions represented cruelty rather than justice. Sheriff Reed found that perspective deeply unsettling, because history demonstrated how often noble intentions protected terrible things. The road to forgetting is rarely paved by villains. More often, it is paved by exhausted people desperate for stability. Detective Cole shared that view. During a late-night discussion at the station, he voiced a theory. Maybe nobody in Black Hollow thinks they're hiding anything. Reed looked up. Explain. If enough time passes, managed memory becomes authentic memory. Children inherit stories already edited. They believe them completely. The sheriff remained silent, because the idea felt true. Frighteningly true. What begins as deliberate omission eventually transforms into sincere belief. Generations later, nobody remembers the original decision. Only the approved version survives. And anyone questioning it appears disruptive. Like Evelyn. Deputy Morris continued studying the mysterious initials found within community records. Research consumed entire evenings. Old directories, church membership lists, property deeds. Then, shortly after midnight on the 33rd day, she found something remarkable.
FT.
Robert Turner, brother of Eli Turner, former safety inspector at Mercer Mine. Officially relocated in 1962. No forwarding address. No additional documentation. Simply gone. Yet Evelyn's notes beside his name contained two underlined words. Last witness. The discovery electrified the investigation. Last witness to what? Nobody knew. But if Robert Turner witnessed events contradicting official history, his disappearance from community records suddenly acquired enormous significance. Sheriff Reed drove to Eli Turner's farmhouse the following morning. The old man opened the door with visible resignation. You found Robert's name. It wasn't a question. Where did he go? Reed asked. Eli stared toward distant hills.
Away. Why?
Because staying required lying. Silence filled the room. Did he tell anyone what happened? Only me. And what happened? A very long pause. The old man's hands trembled slightly. Enough people died that night to change everything. But not enough people wanted that truth known. The sentence landed like thunder. Official records mentioned 3 injuries.
No des.
Eli continued before Reed could speak. You think secrets survive through force. They don't. They survive because ordinary people convince themselves they're protecting one another. His voice carried neither anger nor pride. Only exhaustion. Robert couldn't live with that bargain. So he left. And never returned? Never. Another witness erased by geography instead of time. Another piece removed from the puzzle. As Reed drove back toward town, snow began falling lightly across the mountains. Small flakes. Almost delicate. Winter announcing itself. Black Hollow looked beautiful beneath that quiet white descent. Beautiful places, he realized, often hold complicated histories. Beauty does not prevent suffering. It merely makes suffering easier to romanticize afterward. That night, lights glowed warmly inside homes across the valley. Families gathered. Children completed homework. Elderly residents remembered better years. Life persisted with stubborn determination. Yet beneath ordinary existence, old foundations continued shifting. Evelyn Hart disappeared searching for facts. What she uncovered instead may have been something infinitely more difficult to confront. A community's capacity to reshape memory in service of survival. The question was no longer whether Black Hollow kept secrets. Every town keeps secrets. The question involved whether those secrets originated from malice, or from love twisted carefully over decades into silence, so complete that nobody remembered silence had once been a choice at all. And somewhere beyond frozen fields and abandoned mine roads, the truth waited with remarkable patience. Because truth does not disappear when ignored. It simply learns how to outlive the people who attempted to bury it. The 36th day began with snow. Not enough to close roads. Not enough to stop life. Just enough to cover old footprints and create the illusion that the world had been made clean again. Black Hollow understood that illusion intimately. Fresh snow hides everything. Until spring arrives. Until thaw comes. Until the earth decides to return what human beings believed was safely buried. Sheriff Thomas Reed stood outside the station before sunrise, watching white flakes drift through the glow of street lamps. The town looked peaceful. Too peaceful. That bothered him. Because peace and silence had become impossible to separate in his mind. Every conversation returned to the same question. What price had Black Hollow paid for harmony? And who continued paying it decades later? Inside, Detective Richard Cole reviewed notes from his meeting with Eli Turner. One sentence refused to leave him alone. Enough people died that night to change everything. Enough people. Plural. Definitive. The official account recognized no deaths. The discrepancy was enormous. Either an old man carried false memories after 17 years, or an entire community had inherited a version of history deliberately stripped of its sharpest edges. Cole increasingly feared the latter. Not because conspiracy thrilled him, because human beings possess an extraordinary capacity for collective self-preservation. Communities edit themselves. Families edit themselves. Nations edit themselves. They remove details that threaten continuity. Then future generations mistake editing for truth. Evelyn Hart had apparently noticed the revisions, and she refused to accept them. Deputy Ellen Morris continued tracing Robert Turner, the last witness, the vanished brother, the man who chose distance over silence. State records offered little. No death certificate.
No voter registration.
No property ownership. It was as though Robert stepped beyond Kentucky and dissolved into America itself. Then, buried inside an old Union newsletter from 1964, Morris discovered a single reference.
Turner.
Machine inspector. Ash Creek Manufacturing. Oregon. The room fell silent. 2,000 miles away. An entirely different life. Sheriff Reed contacted authorities immediately. Perhaps Robert still lived. Perhaps memory survived. Perhaps time had not erased everything. Hope returned cautiously.
Carefully.
The kind of hope investigators permit themselves only after disappointment has become familiar. Meanwhile, Black Hollow endured its own transformation. People had started asking parents uncomfortable questions. Grandparents received unexpected visitors. Family albums emerged from closets. Old stories resurfaced. Not because anyone demanded them. Because Evelyn's disappearance shattered a long-standing assumption that the past was settled. Suddenly, nothing felt settled anymore. At Miller's Diner, conversations grew hesitant whenever 1961 entered discussion. Some residents defended earlier generations passionately. They did what they had to do. Others remained uncertain. What exactly did they do? The distinction mattered. Defending necessity requires understanding actions. And understanding remained frustratingly absent. Mayor Leonard Briggs felt increasingly isolated. He belonged to both worlds. Old enough to inherit traditional loyalties. Young enough to recognize modern expectations regarding truth. One evening, he visited Reverend Daniel Price, son of the minister Evelyn interviewed weeks before vanishing. Their families had known each other for decades. The church office smelled of old books and candle wax. A comforting scent. Mayor Briggs spoke first. Did our parents make mistakes? Reverend Price answered carefully. All parents make mistakes. I mean about the mine. Silence. The Reverend removed his glasses. I think they believed peace required boundaries. And was that wrong? Another silence. I think boundaries have expiration dates. The answer lingered long after the conversation ended. Expiration dates. Perhaps truths suppressed during crisis eventually demand release. Perhaps communities survive temporary silence, but suffer permanent silence differently. Perhaps Evelyn arrived exactly when Black Hollow's old agreements could no longer sustain themselves. That possibility frightened everyone, because it suggested inevitability. Not accident, not coincidence. Inevitability. On the 38th day, another discovery emerged from Evelyn's office. Hidden behind a bookshelf sat a narrow wooden box.
No lock.
No label. Inside rested index cards organized alphabetically.
Hundreds of them.
Names.
Dates.
Relationships. A historian's private map of community memory. Deputy Morris spent hours reviewing the collection. Most entries contained ordinary information. Birth records. Property transfers. Marriage connections. Then she reached the T section. Turner, Robert. The card carried more writing than any other. Last confirmed witness refusing official version. Believes meeting at St. Matthew's decided narrative before investigation concluded. Left town voluntarily. Told sister in 1963. They wanted peace. I wanted memory. Sheriff Reed read the sentence repeatedly. They wanted peace. I wanted memory. Two incompatible desires. Two competing visions for survival. Perhaps that conflict defined Black Hollow more profoundly than geography or industry ever could. The town chose peace. Robert Turner chose memory. And Evelyn Hart, 17 years later, unknowingly walked the same path Robert abandoned. Snow continued falling through the week. Roads narrowed. Search efforts slowed. Volunteers persisted despite worsening conditions. Determination had become ritual now. People searched because stopping felt unbearable, not because anyone expected immediate miracles. Harold Hart joined those efforts daily. Neighbors begged him to rest. He refused. Fathers, he explained, do not retire from hope. At night he sat inside Evelyn's study reading her notes. Learning things about his daughter he wished he understood sooner. Her fears. Her convictions. Her belief that memory represented moral responsibility. One passage struck him particularly hard. Written only months before she disappeared. The most powerful stories are not the ones communities tell. They are the ones communities agree never to tell. Harold closed the notebook. Tears arrived quietly, because he finally understood. Evelyn had not chased mystery for excitement. She chased silence, because silence fascinated her. Why do entire groups of decent people avoid certain truths? What invisible forces preserve collective forgetting? Questions like those consumed her. Questions like those may have placed her in danger. On the 40th day, news arrived from Oregon. Robert Turner was alive. 80 years old. Living in a coastal town. Retired. Widowed. Authorities requested permission for contact. His response came swiftly.
No.
No explanation. No hesitation. Simply no. The rejection devastated investigators. Yet attached to the message appeared one additional sentence. Some places survive because certain nights remain buried. Sheriff Reed stared at the words. Another defense of silence. Another appeal to preservation. Even the man who chose memory decades earlier now resisted reopening old wounds. Or perhaps age changes convictions. Perhaps carrying truth alone for 17 years creates exhaustion impossible to imagine. Detective Cole interpreted it differently. He thinks talking matters. Otherwise, he wouldn't respond at all. Maybe. Maybe not. The ambiguity persisted. Always ambiguity. Black Hollow specialized in it. That evening, winds howled across the valley. Snow collected against abandoned mining structures. The Mercer site disappeared beneath white silence. Nature performing its oldest trick. Covering everything equally. Innocence.
Guilt.
Memory. Regret. The earth made no distinctions. Humans did. And humans had apparently spent decades deciding which truths deserved survival. Evelyn Hart vanished 40 days earlier. Yet her absence continued exposing hidden architecture beneath the town she loved. Not criminal empires. Not elaborate conspiracies. Something far more human. A collective agreement born from fear, grief, and good intentions. The most enduring secrets are rarely protected by monsters. They are protected by ordinary people convinced they are saving one another. Black Hollow had lived inside that conviction for nearly 2 decades. Now the conviction itself stood on trial. And somewhere beyond frozen roads and fading memories, the question remained unchanged. What had Evelyn discovered that transformed historical curiosity into genuine danger? The answer waited. Patient. Unmoving. Like the mountains surrounding the town. Watching generations come and go. Remembering everything. Forgetting nothing. 43 days after Evelyn Hart disappeared, Black Hollow awoke beneath a silence so complete that even the church bells sounded distant. Snow covered everything now. The mine roads, the abandoned rail lines, the forgotten footpaths known only to hunters and old men. Winter had arrived with authority. And winter, more than any season, rewards secrets. The land closes. The earth hardens. Questions wait for spring. But human beings rarely possess the patience of mountains. Sheriff Thomas Reed certainly did not. He slept little, ate less. The investigation had stopped resembling ordinary police work weeks earlier. No suspect. No body. No direct evidence of violence. Only a missing historian and an expanding realization that Black Hollow carried an inherited relationship with silence unlike anything he had encountered before. The town had not merely forgotten parts of its past. It had organized forgetting. That distinction haunted him. Inside the station, a fire crackled weakly in an iron stove while Detective Richard Cole studied photographs recovered from St. Matthew's Community Hall. Community picnics, fundraisers, holiday celebrations, ordinary life. Yet among hundreds of images from the early 1960s, something stood out. Certain faces appeared repeatedly. Always together. Always near positions of authority. The same men Evelyn identified in her notebooks. The same individuals connected to meetings held after the Mercer incident. Community leaders. Decision makers. Architects of consensus. Cole pinned the photographs to a wall. Not evidence of wrongdoing. Evidence of influence. Sometimes influence shapes history more effectively than power ever could. Deputy Ellen Morris entered carrying a weathered county directory. She had spent days reconstructing family connections, bloodlines, marriages, business partnerships. The patterns formed an intricate web. Black Hollow operated less like a town and more like an extended memory shared across generations. Children inherited stories. Grandchildren inherited silences. Nobody consciously enforced them. No formal rules existed. Yet everybody understood. Some subjects remained untouched. Some nights belonged to history. Some questions created unnecessary pain. Evelyn Hart ignored those understandings completely. Perhaps that was her greatest act of courage. Or her gravest mistake. Meanwhile, Harold Hart continued opening pieces of his daughter's life one careful layer at a time. In a cedar chest beneath old blankets, he discovered a bundle of letters. Most came from university friends, ordinary correspondence, dreams,
plans,
arguments about books and politics. Then one envelope changed everything. No return address. Dated 3 months before Evelyn disappeared. The handwriting belonged to Evelyn herself. A copy of a letter she never sent. Dear Professor Lewis, I think I underestimated what collective memory can do. People assume communities forget naturally. I no longer believe that. I think remembering and forgetting are both social acts. Entire towns choose which stories deserve survival. The final paragraph remained unfinished. The last complete sentence read, If my conclusions are correct, Black Hollow has spent 17 years protecting not a secret, but an agreement. Sheriff Reed read the words in silence. An agreement. Always the same idea. Different language. Same foundation. People deciding together how reality should be carried into the future. The implications felt enormous. Because agreements require participants. Participants require motives. And motives, even noble ones, can produce devastating consequences. On the 45th day, a snowplow driver reported something unusual near Lantern Creek Road. A wooden marker, partially buried. recently exposed by drifting snow. Investigators responded immediately. The marker contained no names.
No dates.
Only 3 carved words. Remember with mercy. The phrase puzzled everyone. Weathering suggested age. Perhaps decades old. Perhaps older. No official records mentioned its existence. No maps identified it, yet its location mattered. Less than a mile from where Evelyn's car had been discovered. Sheriff Reed examined the carving carefully.
Mercy.
Another word repeatedly associated with silence.
Peace.
Healing.
Mercy.
All beautiful concepts. All potentially dangerous when invoked to avoid truth. Local historian records eventually provided an explanation. The marker once stood near a gathering site used after the Mercer tragedy. Families reportedly met there for prayer services, private ceremonies, moments of collective mourning. The official documents called it a place of reconciliation. The unofficial memories remained far less clear. That evening, Reverend Daniel Price visited the Hart family. He carried an old church ledger inherited from his father. The book had never been publicly examined. Not because anyone hid it, simply because nobody asked.
Until now.
The entries from 1961 proved extraordinary. Prayer requests, funeral arrangements, counseling sessions, and repeated references to households receiving spiritual support after the difficult night. Not the fire, not the accident, the difficult night. A phrase broad enough to include almost anything, or everything. Harold Hart turned pages carefully. How many families? More than official reports suggested. Far more. Nobody spoke. Because numbers create uncomfortable questions. Questions create accountability. And accountability reaches backward through generations. Detective Cole summarized the problem perfectly. If these records are accurate, Black Hollow responded to a tragedy larger than history acknowledges. Sheriff Reed nodded. Then, why hide it? The Reverend answered quietly. Maybe nobody intended to hide it forever. Maybe they only wanted time to heal things. The room remained silent. Because temporary silence has a remarkable tendency to become permanent tradition. One generation postpones difficult conversations. The next generation inherits the postponement. Eventually, nobody remembers that speaking openly was ever an option. Evelyn remembered. Or perhaps she rediscovered the possibility. Outside, winter deepened. The mountains surrounding Black Hollow looked eternal beneath fresh snow. Children played in schoolyards. Store owners decorated windows for approaching holidays. Life continued with stubborn dignity. Yet beneath ordinary existence, foundations continued shifting. People asked grandparents about 1961. Some received stories. Others received silence. Both responses carried meaning. Deputy Morris found herself thinking constantly about Robert Turner. They wanted peace. I wanted memory. The sentence had become a kind of compass. 2 directions. 2 philosophies. Mutually exclusive. Could a community possess both? Could truth and stability coexist after sufficient time passed? Or did every society eventually choose one over the other? Evelyn clearly believed memory mattered more. Not because she enjoyed conflict. Because she believed forgotten pain returns in different forms. The anonymous messages. The missing research. The careful removal of her satchel. Everything suggested someone else believed differently. Someone who still viewed silence as protection. Protection for whom remained the unanswered question. On the 47th night, wind swept through Black Hollow with astonishing force. Power flickered. Branches snapped. The old town groaned beneath winter's first true assault. Sheriff Reed sat alone in his office reviewing evidence long after midnight. Photographs, letters, meeting transcripts, cassette recordings. He realized something unsettling. No single piece proved anything extraordinary. Taken individually, every document appeared ordinary. Only together did they reveal a pattern. And patterns possess power. Evelyn Hart had spent years assembling those patterns. Following threads nobody else noticed. Recognizing that communities remember collectively, not accidentally. Perhaps she reached one conclusion too many. Perhaps she stood one question away from understanding why Black Hollow protected its old agreements with such remarkable loyalty. Outside, snow continued falling, covering roads, covering fields, covering the place where a young woman disappeared while carrying a satchel full of history and a conviction that silence, regardless of its intentions, always leaves traces behind. The town still believed winter could preserve its secrets. But Evelyn Hart had already proven something essential. The most dangerous truths are never buried. They remain alive inside memory, waiting patiently, waiting for someone brave enough to ask why an entire community learned to remember the same night in exactly the same incomplete way. The Black Hollow Gazette. November 2nd, 1978. Missing historian case deepens as community questions old memories. By Margaret Ellis, staff reporter. Black Hollow, 17 days after local historian Evelyn Hart vanished without explanation, investigators continue searching wooded areas surrounding Lantern Creek and the abandoned Mercer Mine property, while residents struggle with growing uncertainty and renewed discussion about events many believed belonged solely to the past. Hart, 29, was last seen on the evening of October 17th after leaving the county library, where she had been conducting extensive research into Black Hollow's early industrial history. Her vehicle was discovered the following morning near Lantern Creek Road. Personal belongings remained inside. Her research materials did not. Authorities have declined to speculate on whether the disappearance is connected to Hart's historical investigations, though Sheriff Thomas Reed acknowledged that detectives are examining all possibilities. "We are pursuing every lead available to us," Reed stated during yesterday's press briefing. The priority remains bringing Evelyn home and providing answers to her family. Yet answers remain painfully scarce. Volunteers continue daily search operations despite worsening weather conditions. Church groups have organized prayer services. Businesses across Main Street display yellow ribbons near storefront windows. Still, beneath public solidarity lies an uncomfortable reality. People are talking about 1961 again. For many longtime residents, that year exists as a difficult chapter associated with the Mercer Mine incident, an event officially described as an industrial accident followed by community recovery efforts. Younger residents, however, increasingly ask questions their parents and grandparents appear reluctant to answer. At Miller's Diner on Wednesday morning, conversations stopped entirely when the subject emerged. "It's not that folks don't remember," said one resident who requested anonymity. "It's that remembering comes with responsibilities nobody wants to inherit." Another lifelong citizen offered a different perspective. "We survived because people chose unity over blame," she explained. Maybe outsiders don't understand that. Maybe they never will. Hart's academic work reportedly focused on oral histories and personal recollections rather than official documents alone. Friends describe her as meticulous, compassionate, and deeply committed to preserving local memory. "Evelyn wasn't trying to expose anyone," said former colleague Anna Lewis. She believed every community deserved an honest relationship with its own history. That belief may now stand at the center of a mystery extending far beyond one person's disappearance. Retired residents have quietly begun revisiting family photographs and personal papers. Church records previously stored away for decades have resurfaced. Several citizens acknowledge that discussions occurring behind closed doors throughout town concern not merely Evelyn Hart, but the stories Black Hollow has chosen to tell itself over generations. Professor Harold Hart, Evelyn's father, spoke briefly outside his home yesterday. "My daughter loved this town," he said. "She believed loving a place meant remembering it completely, the beautiful parts and the painful parts alike." No evidence presently confirms any connection between Hart's research and her disappearance. Nevertheless, the timing has fueled speculation impossible to ignore. State investigators remain involved. Search efforts continue. And Black Hollow waits. Waiting, perhaps, for a missing woman. Or perhaps for a conversation postponed far longer than anyone realized. Until answers emerge, one fact remains undeniable. The disappearance of Evelyn Hart has reopened questions the mountains surrounding this community have kept in silence for nearly 2 decades. Whether those questions ultimately bring healing or division remains uncertain. But for the first time in many years, Black Hollow appears willing to ask them aloud.